Welcome to Torah Smash, the podcast for nerdy Jews, where our lives of Jewish learning collide with our love of nerd culture. In each episode, we discuss what we lovingly call a Torah Smash, which we have defined as a beautiful collision of one thing from the world of Judaism with another from nerd culture. I am Barak Malkin, and joining me today are
Ethan Lane Miller,
RDY,
Alex Shuval-Weiner.
Our guest for today's episode is Rabbi Alexandria Shuval-Weiner. Rabbi Alex is a rabbi serving Temple Beth Tikva in Roswell, Georgia. She was a Jewish educator for 18 years before heading off to Hebrew Union College and ultimately being ordained in 2008. Beyond her leadership in the Jewish community, Rabbi Shuval-Weiner brings a unique blend of humor and intellect to her work, from her involvement in the Marvel TV series Agatha All Along to her scholarly contributions to Musar and Torah study. A passionate advocate for social justice, she enjoys integrating her love of Jewish tradition with her interest in nature and veganism. As a mom and grandma, Alex has been learning much about Jewish nerd culture since appearing on Agatha All Along. I am thrilled to welcome the first person from the Marvel Cinematic Universe to appear on Torah Smash, Rabbi Alexandria Shuval-Weiner. Welcome.
So exciting. I have to say, before we really get started, that, Alex, you and I have known each other since planning the Orange County Rabbis Convention, which you led brilliantly. And when that episode came on, I'm living in Austin and my family's in Chicago. So that episode comes on and I was like, oh my God, that's Alex. Oh my God, there's no one to tell. I was so shouting in my apartment to no one.
That's what I heard that night.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, very excited. As I said, first person from the, hopefully, the first person from the Marvel Cinematic Universe to be on our podcast, which is super exciting. And when RDY had said that he knew the rabbi from Agatha All Along, I was even more over the moon when you had said yes. So thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. This is super cool.
Awesome.
And also, Mazel Tov on your second grandchild. Is that correct?
Well, second biological grandchild, sixth in our family.
Woo!
Yeah.
Mazel Tov.
Thank you.
All of them are wonderful.
All right. I don't want RDY to use the entire episode to catch up. So, because we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. So let's sort of jump in. So on today's episode, we're going to be looking at the MCU's newest TV show, Agatha All Along. After an acclaimed performance by Kathryn Hahn, they continued some of the story from WandaVision into a really well-done part 2. The Agatha All Along series follows Agatha, who is trying to get her power back after breaking out of the Scarlet Witch's spell, and is joined by a coven of characters, as well as a very special character who is simply named Teen for most of the show. This character, whose identity remains hidden for most of the episodes, has their backstory told during episode 6 in 10 of the most well-done Jewish minutes of Marvel history so far. These 10 minutes of the series is where we start our conversation, but more specifically, what Jewish selection of this flashback do you think will be guiding our conversation today?
Can I also say that not only is that high praise, calling it some of the best Jewish 10 minutes in the Marvel Cinematic world, but this is also after we've done a Moon Knight episode where there was some real specific Jewish stuff in there.
Yeah, we did the Moon Knight conversation before the show, and so we didn't.
Oh, I didn't remember that.
Yeah, we got the backstory. Yeah,
that was episode 7. This is episode quadruple high.
Yeah, we're in 72. Alex, I'll let you take the first crack. What Jewish selection of this flashback scene do you think will be guiding our conversation?
Well, I'm going to guess the selection of the Torah portion.
Yeah, you spot on right away.
Bingo.
In today's episode, we're going to take a look at the Torah portion that William Kaplan read in his bar mitzvah scene, Leviticus 10:1, and see how it relates to the series as a whole. All right, time for us to hit this road. This is
down.
Yeah. This is a pretty recent show, so a big heads up to our listeners that this episode will definitely contain some major spoilers for Agatha All Along. But first question, has everybody watched Agatha All Along? What do we think?
Oh, boy, have I ever.
It is probably the best Marvel series since the first season of Loki.
I don't know. I was thinking about it going into this podcast, what I would say. I think what I would say is, for me personally, Loki is my favorite. And then I'm unable to separate Agatha All Along from WandaVision in terms of what is next. But this is up there with like, this is the top. I loved Agatha All Along so much.
I know I enjoyed it because this is the first Marvel show that I've done a rewatch of, which is a rarity, but there were so many like time loop like pieces that you don't catch the first time. I caught so much the second time, and it made it even more enjoyable. Rabbi Alex, have you had a chance to watch it? Are you a Marvel fan? Okay.
Yes. Well, that's two different questions.
Two different questions.
Fan and did I watch it?
All right. Well, did you watch it? How's that?
Yes, I did.
Excellent. Yeah. What'd you think?
I thought it was very cool. And after doing the portion that I was involved in and then being able to watch the whole thing, it was like all these little clues. It was something like, oh, I remember when they were talking about this, or we were planning that, and it all just linked together, and it was super cool. And then I got to spend a lot of time with Joe Locke, and Joe was sharing things with me that he was working on that also was like, oh my gosh, that's what he was talking about then. So yeah, it was neat. And the show itself, I really, really enjoyed.
That's awesome. All right.
Can I ask an inside question?
Yeah.
Did they choose you based on an audition, or did they just like your synagogue, or what was the process?
Oh, great. Well, first of all, it was not my synagogue as much as I tried to convince them to use my synagogue. It was Temple Kol Emeth, which is down, about 5 miles from us. Beautiful sanctuary.
It's down the road from you?
Down the road, yeah. And they chose it because they have some very beautiful stained glass windows that they had wanted to incorporate in. But in terms of being hired for it, they had actually almost a year previously had put out a call to the rabbis in Atlanta that they were looking for a rabbi. And if you were interested in sending in an audition tape, contact them. And there was like some scuttlebutt within the community. It was like, oh, what is it? And, should anybody participate or not? And blah, blah, blah. And I was like, it was still COVID and I was alone in my sanctuary. And it was like, what the heck? Why not?
That's great. You don't have to say any names, but do you know of any friends or colleagues that also went out for this part?
After the fact, I heard a couple of colleagues saying, oh, once we saw the show, then we figured out who got it. So I'm pretty sure others did.
Okay. That's very fun. All right. Well, I have more insider questions later, but moving on to the topic. William Kaplan isn't the first Jewish character from the comics to be brought to life in the MCU, but I will say that he's probably the best iteration thus far. And I'm not counting Magneto in the X-Men franchise, as that hasn't joined up with the MCU just yet. In episode 6, we get to learn about Teen's background, and we start this by watching him on the bima at his bar mitzvah. He is reading his Torah portion, which is Leviticus 10:1. Rabbi Alex, can you explain for my friend Jason, who is not Jewish, what is this Torah portion about?
Yes. So this particular portion is about Aaron, Moses' brother. Aaron is the first Kohen Gadol, the first high priest, and he and his sons are preparing to basically have the opening ceremony of the sacred space where the Israelite people will connect with God. And it's opening night, and Aaron's 2 eldest sons, Nadav and Avihu, have been preparing to make this big, flashy offering to God in front of the people. And they do so. They come forward, they bring their fire pans, but something goes radically wrong, and they are incinerated on the spot in front of all of the people. And it's just this dramatic, tragic event that occurs in the sacred literature.
God says, I didn't ask how big the room was. I said I cast fireball.
Was this Torah portion already chosen, or is this something that you were involved in?
No, I got to be involved in that. Yeah, it was really neat. So when I was first hired to train the actor. And so I was asking a lot of clarifying questions, one of which was, what exactly do you want me to train him? And it came down as they kept saying, well, we want him to do, they kept going back and forth between Torah and half Torah. And I think there was some confusion really over what what it was. But when it came down to Torah, I started asking questions like, do you want the Torah portion to align to a particular time of year, a particular subject matter? And so I actually got called into a Zoom meeting with the writers to kind of talk through what the options could look like. So as part of my clarifying questions, I was trying to find out, well, who is this actor and what's it about? And I really knew nothing about the Marvel universe. I knew nothing about these characters. So they sent me some NDAs. And then after I signed them, we had a conversation. And so based on how they were describing who the character was and some of the things that would occur, I made the recommendation and they liked it.
Do you know were there any other portions that were being considered?
I had suggested 3 possible portions, and honestly, I just don't even remember what the other 2 were. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. That's super fun.
It's been a while.
All right. So question I know that you selected this, but I always think that
I recommended.
Oh, you recommended it. Oh, okay, great. So let's think. Is this referring to the events shortly after the bar mitzvah of Westview's magic being expunged causes the deaths of Billy and Tommy? Or is this foreshadowing? Do we think that perhaps their magic is the strange fire and them accepting their magical powers will ultimately be their end? As many properties say, all magic comes with a price.
So from my lens, simply because I didn't know a lot about, really what was going to unfold, but how they were describing the character and knowing that it was somehow also a continuation of WandaVision, to me, it just felt like a lot of Avodah Zarah, which was, this foreign alien way of engaging with the divine and the divine powers that the Israelite people are warned against. And so that's just kind of what I kept hearing in my brain as they were describing. So for me, it would have been a foreshadowing. What the writers and the directors were thinking based on the recommendations that were being made, I can't speak to that.
I think as a comic book nerd, the relationship between Nadav and Abihu and Billy and Tommy was what jumped out at me. That using this strange fire to do their magic and then the collapsing of Westview would be like God casting fireball.
I agree with you, and I bet that there will be some circling back on this, right? While I do think it applies, right? He's reading the portion pretty much as likely as Wanda is battling Agatha at the end of WandaVision, right? I think it applies to Billy and Tommy's death in Westview and him finding his new body. I bet, just as they pull our heartstrings, right? I don't think Wanda's dead. I really don't. And I think Billy and Tommy both eventually getting their powers, in my guess, which will be part 3 of WandaVision, Vision Quest. I think they will both get their powers, and them fully embracing their powers will cause some other cataclysmic thing that will cause them to perish, and therefore Wanda loses her children again, unfortunately. I think it will come back around, and them using because in the first one, Wanda used the fire. They used a little bit in the final battle, very little bit. I think when they fully take on this power later, it will have repercussions, and I think it won't go well. And I think that they'll utilize this as a both retelling and foreshadowing.
Well, there's also a connection between Agatha Harkness and the Fantastic Four.
Go on.
She was Franklin Richards' nanny. So
really?
Franklin in like the 1970s comic books. So Franklin Richards is the child of Reed and Susan Richards. Reed Richards is the stretchy Mr. Fantastic, and Susan Richards is the Invisible Woman. And in the comic books, they're married, and they have 2 children. The elder is Franklin Richards, and Agatha Harkness is his nanny, and teaches him in mystic arts and things. I mean, Franklin Richards is considered one of the most powerful mutants in the Marvel Universe.
Wow.
Do you think Catherine Hahn will show up at the end of the Fantastic Four movie? Like, it's taken place in the 60s, 70s.
Right?
That'd be super fun. That'd be amusing.
It would be brilliant.
Anything else regarding the Torah portion people want to sort of jump on regarding Nadav and Avi? Oh, Nadav, wonderful name. It's the name of one of my kids.
Great name.
Anything else with Nadav and Avihu in this story that we want to sort of point at?
One of the things that strikes me in this Torah portion is that there's this move along, nothing to see here atmosphere after they get disintegrated, where Moses just says to the other two sons of Aaron, get rid of his body. Let's just keep on with the celebration. So there's this the show must go on kind of attitude, which is what happens along the witches' road as death chases down the witches of the coven. Agatha is just like,
well, Agatha keeps pushing everybody forward. Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
We've got a road to travel, people.
Yeah. That was so good. All right. So how do we feel about the Jewish depiction of William Kaplan?
I thought it was great. I mean, like secular Jew, bar mitzvah and out.
No, that's terrible. Most people don't leave because their body's been taken over by another soul, though.
Yes, they have. That soul is called social media.
Okay. And they're going to say adulthood.
I did see some people questioning the inclusion of a fortune teller at the bar mitzvah party. As a more secular Jew, I didn't have a problem with it, but there, of course we go online, there's a lot of ways of saying things, but that was one of the comments I saw online that initially when viewing it, I didn't question it at all.
There are two fortune teller scenes in the series that I remember. Both of them I saw as a shout out to the Wizard of Oz, because in the beginning of the Wizard of Oz, Dorothy goes to the fortune teller who ends up being the wizard. And there's a similar scene in Patti LuPone's episode where she's doing the fortune telling, and then at the end of the episode, she kind of dressed like Glenda. And then this other fortune teller scene, I mentioned to you off microphone, Barak, I think, that I saw a parallel to Wizard of Oz in every episode.
Yeah.
And while I can't point them out right now because I haven't rewatched it, I feel like they were all over the place. And I mean, the opening credits was an homage to all of the witch properties that there are out there, which was beautiful.
Yeah.
But it was specifically very Wizard of Oz heavy.
The fortune teller at the bar mitzvah, I'm a little confused by, just because I don't think he fell into his interest of witchcraft until he was confused of who he was when Billy took over William's body. And I don't know if there was like an interest that he had, and so fortune tellers were on that list, because he's a totally new person afterwards. So that's the only part of it that confused me, that it was more of a convenient story plot as opposed to well-written placement. But
well, they definitely set up the bar mitzvah party as kind of that, it was very eerie and had lots of little lanterns around, and kind of an LA, no insult to LA bar mitzvah parties, but
it was big. I've been to LA bar mitzvah. When I worked in LA, I went to some of those bar mitzvah parties. Some of them are over the top.
Yeah.
And that was a big party that they showed.
Yeah.
And the idea,
so Westview is Eastview. Eastview is the LA of New Jersey.
Sure.
The idea of a bar mitzvah party theme has been around since I became bar mitzvah in 87 and before. And even like today, you may or may not see one. But I thought that was, pretty typical for what happens at bar mitzvah parties. I have actually been to a bar mitzvah party when I was 13 or 14, and there was a palm reader and a tarot reader at this party that I remember. I wore glasses as a kid, and I went in really, really early in the evening with my glasses on, and then went late in the evening without them to see if the answers would be the same.
Were they?
They were similar. She said she recognized me, and I lied.
Well, in the party after the service, I will say everyone is still wearing their kippot, and this pulled me out, as when the service ends and the party begins, most people typically remove the kippot.
So there was a whole conversation about that.
I assumed so. I assumed they wanted to like really just, hey, it's Jewish, right? Let's make sure that if this wasn't a reform bar mitzvah, maybe, right? In the conservative ones I've been to, more than half the room probably keeps it on throughout because there's still the blessing when you eat the food and all that stuff. So in my experience of the Reform movement, and they are definitely Reformed Jews, I found that out. Did you all find that out? You said there was a conversation around this. Are you able to
we had
share?
this whole conversation, and it was like kippot on, kippot off. And I was asking, well, is this a kiddish lunch that's going straight into the party? Or do we have a time break? And so it was decided it was a kiddish lunch going into the party. So in that sense, some of the people would have kept their kippot on. Some of them would have taken it off by then.
Okay. Right. Yeah. If it just moves into the social hall,
right.
I can see most people will keep them on right away. Totally. That's understandable. Yep. That's fine.
That's why they call them keep-ons.
I love that they had to figure that out. And based on the timing of WandaVision, it would have to have been a kiddish luncheon because it's still light out when they're battling. So this couldn't have been an evening fight, in which case they drive home at the end of the party and that's when everything is powering down. So
good observation.
I think that have to be the case. Here's the other thing. Also on my rewatch, I did not see any mezuzot on the doors of their house, both outside and in. And this would have been a great chance to highlight some Jewish art pieces or holiday keepsakes and like the china cabinet in the background or something.
Yeah.
And nothing. At least a ketubah on the wall. Something, right? They did that in Moon Knight out the wazoo because his dad's a rabbi, even though we don't meet his dad in the show. But this, as a Reform family, at least I would assume at least a ketubah on the wall or like one mezuzah, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to talk to them about anything outside of the show.
Yeah, the household did not read like something. Right. I wanted something else.
Mezuzah? There was no mezuzah?
I purposely watched on my rewatch for the door entering the house, his bedroom door, leaving the kitchen. None of the frames of the house have any mezuzot. Hey, listeners, any eagle eye spotters out there? If you found one, please let me know.
The ketubah not being there, like that could be that. I mean, that should be in the bedroom. That's okay.
Ours is in our living room. It's a beautiful piece of artwork.
Ours is too, but it's for us.
Okay, that's fine. Anything else on the Jewish piece? Unlike the family?
They did a great job. Like when they were setting up, it didn't make it into the scenes, but they had water bottles with his name on. They had, in the service, before the service, when you come into the synagogue and you've got the whole, the honor list and everything. So they had the bar mitzvah of William Kaplan.
Wow.
They had all of those details done, which was really very nifty.
Did they hire like a bar mitzvah planner or something to help with the setups? Because for them to have caught some of those details is truly fun to me.
I am going to make a guess. It's a stretch. Mm-hmm. Perhaps some writers in Hollywood are Jewish.
maybe the odd one right here and there.
This might be too deep of a cut.
Yeah.
But Alex, do you know if the last name Kaplan was intentional or was it coincidence?
I don't know the answer to that. The William Kaplan.
Isn't that his name in the comics?
No, because in the comics he's
reincarnated as
right. In this show, he's reincarnated as William Kaplan. That's a device for this particular series. But
I mean like reborn as like he starts a new life as William Kaplan. I thought that's what it is in the comics.
Oh, okay. So then I don't know if it was intentional in the comics because Kaplan is a Jewish philosopher. He started Reconstructionist Judaism, and the idea that he's reconstructing his own life and bringing new philosophies into the rich world. I mean, it might just be, sometimes when you're looking for things, you find them whether or not they're there.
Well, I've got a different question. Did you choose your character's name in the show?
I didn't. When I showed up the first day for filming, I had a different name. And so on my van, my dressing van, it had Rabbi Friedman. And then when we started filming and they gave me the script, because I did have speaking roles, but they all got cut. They had changed the name.
Oh.
They had changed the rabbi's name, yeah.
And it was Rabbi Levin in the show?
Yeah.
And we got to get a picture of you onto IMDb. It's just got a blank spot where the picture goes.
I didn't even know that was there until somebody else pointed it out to me.
It's very fun.
Yeah, your whole bio says Alexandria Shuval-Weiner is known for Agatha All Along 2020.
All right, so we're getting into some of the behind the scenes questions, and I'm sure we have lots. I searched the internet, and I don't know if you've been interviewed for this already. Are we like have you been interviewed for your role on the show before?
I was interviewed by The Forward, and Moment Magazine was doing something on Jews, in Hollywood. And I don't know what's happened to that, whether it's coming out or not, but I think it's just part of a bigger piece on how Jews are presented these days.
Did the Forward article come out? Because I don't know if when I search for something, I want to be like,
yes, it did.
I'll have to go check that out afterwards. Yeah. All right. So here's a question that I have. I don't know if they've asked you already. When members of the Jewish community have a bar mitzvah, we study for months and months.
Sorry. No, I gotta back you up. This is nails on a chalkboard to me, Barak. I love you.
Yeah.
No one has a bat mitzvah. You become one.
Oh, fine. Thank you for the correction, Rabbi. All right. So when members of the Jewish community become a bar mitzvah, we study for months and months or even years. Joe Locke, who played Teen, did a much better job than you usually hear from someone who is not Jewish. So it sounds like you helped him with that. Did you know do you know what his Jewish studies or prep looked like outside of the time with you? Or how long did this take? What did his process look like that you did so well? How can you teach more Jewish leaders around the Reform movement?
Well, it's lovely to hear that it came off so well. And he's a very good actor, and he's a lovely young man and worked very hard. So we studied for 4 months.
Wow.
He learned his Torah blessing, and he ended up, they did the blessing before the reading of the Torah. I had hoped for him to be able to chant the portion, but we just didn't have enough time. And we really cut down the amount so that we hit that really important chunk, because for those who know, he's starting in the middle of a verse. But it's sort of like Mishemevin Yavin, the ones who know, and they would have immediately gotten that particular verse. But yeah, we met online, and he studied. Usually it was pretty late at night after he'd had a full day of filming. And what was fascinating is he's from the Isle of Man. So he had to learn to pronounce the Hebrew as an American would pronounce Hebrew. So he was doing simultaneous translating in his head. And on top of it, we went back and forth. Should he be using the term Adonai versus Hashem? There was a big debate back and forth. He was taught one way, and then on the set, they wanted him to switch it up and film it with Hashem instead of Adonai, and then went back and wanted him to do it Adonai. He was going back and forth, and so he learned this so well that he was able to basically to code switch.
Wow.
Yeah, it was.
Did they use Adonai? It's been a minute, so I don't remember.
And ended up going with Adonai.
You know what I'm realizing is that he only had to learn one verse and an opening prayer. That's probably most people who study and prepare to become a bar mitzvah have a much larger repertoire of prayers and readings that they have to prepare for, and leading the service. There's a lot. So, okay, I will give him that.
So in fairness to Joe, he did learn the after blessing too. Wow. They just didn't use it. They cut it.
All that work.
Were you, and you were on site for that whole day, even when they had was that all shot in one day, the whole service scene and everything?
That 30-second whole thing. That was 2 days.
2 days.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I want to just go back, how impressive it is for, the work Joe Locke put in to make this as real as he could make it. I mean, the whole accent thing is just so fascinating and so true.
Well, I just want to say he was so, it was important to him that this be not just authentic, but he was so incredibly respectful. There was nothing that took place during those 2 days of filming that he didn't say, until Rabbi Alex says it's right, or it's okay, or then we're not doing it. So, I mean, I give him a lot of props for his deep respect. And I actually blessed him when it was all over. I said, I would have blessed any bar bat mitzvah child who stood in front of me, and I want to offer you a blessing as well. So And he completely took it with all of the love and, it was given with.
I got a little choked up hearing that.
Wow.
That's so beautiful. Way to go, Rabbi.
Thanks.
Any other really unique stories regarding the Jewish prep of the show? Either his studies or other aspects. I loved the conversation of you working with the writers to select a Torah portion. Are there other pieces regarding the service of the party or the house or family life that you talked with them regarding?
I will say they really wanted to have a real rabbi there. That was part of their wanting things to be authentic. I will say that it was like an hour getting the congregational response to the Torah blessing. And we just kept like over and over and over.
To make sure it's in proper unison.
They didn't have 4 months.
That's right.
That was probably the only part that didn't feel real. It was so well done in such unison that never happens. Right?
Can I ask kind of another fanboy question? Paul Edelstein, I assume, is Jewish.
Yeah.
So did he know what to do there?
His own daughter was becoming bat mitzvah a week or so after we shot that scene. So
wow,
LA.
That's fun.
And for people who aren't quite as nerdy as we are, he played the father, Mr. Kaplan.
The showrunner for the show, Jack Schaefer, is Jewish herself on her father's side, I've read.
Correct.
Did you have any conversations with her regarding the show?
Yeah. She was the lead writer. She was for everything and co-directing that. She was in the meetings that we had online, the Zoom meetings. And she was on set. She was running everything. She's pulling strings and talking to people and producers and back in LA and stuff in secret rooms, go running back and forth. So, yeah.
It's fun.
Did she direct that episode also? I know she's got some directing credits.
There was another director on that particular episode, but she was still calling a lot of the shots. So I think she was sort of Uber director.
Well, I think she has a producer credit on the show too, so maybe that was part of it.
Maybe.
Yeah, it could be.
All right, so as I've mentioned, this is the first Marvel show that I've rewatched. If you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend it. The writing is so good. There was a lot of stuff I caught on my second rewatch that I did not catch the first time, and I want to hear if anybody else has some favorite sort of pre-call aheads or foreshadowing lines that they have from the series. And I have a short list of mine, but I want to hear if other people have some.
I wish I had rewatched it.
Oh, you should. You go back and rewatch it. It is wonderfully entertaining even the second time around.
I mean, similar answer to RDY. This is probably not answering the question, Brock, but
very Ethan of you.
Yeah, thank you. Just so much joy I felt watching this. It felt like a little bit of a return. And maybe this is partially why I rank these series so high, that there was an element of talking about this show with my family, with my sisters, of oh my gosh, this is so great. What's going to happen next? Oh, did you catch this? This was so cool. This was so amazing. I think in hindsight, launching WandaVision when it happened, Marvel could not have gotten any lucky. In the middle of the pandemic, we were all stuck, and we had this show that was a mystery slowly unraveling that every week we got to talk to each other about. Mm-hmm. And Loki, in a different way, I got to see Loki season 1 at camp where we were all in a bubble. So it was also a little bit of how do we unravel this mystery together as a community? And then for Agatha All Along, I felt like it was a bit of a return to that aspect. And I loved that so much.
For me, I think it was watching these characters that I've been reading since the 80s kind of jump out, and knowing that Agatha Harkness has never had her own title. And I think she's the only Marvel character who they've done a show about who doesn't have her own series title in book form. And so watching the Salem 7, even though I don't even remember if they got called that, but I definitely don't remember them being called by their names. But their names are animal based. So fox and crow and coyote and snake. And you could see them kind of moving like their animal. And I thought that was just a really cool way to be like, here you go, nerds. Let me throw some birdseed for you. Yeah. Plus the Wizard of Oz stuff that I mentioned already.
Just the casting in this was excellent. I mean, they got Rabbi Shuval-Weiner, who was phenomenal in her role. And I mean, just the cast.
The fact that she was available is just astonishing.
In addition to her, I mean, Aubrey Plaza and Catherine Hahn.
Oh, so good.
And we knew they had chemistry too because of Parks and Rec.
Yes. Yeah. So like it was a mix of these people I was going into expecting to enjoy, and then surprises like Joe Locke, who I'd never seen before. By the end of it, I was like, oh man, he's really good.
I think it's only the second property he's been in. I think the other one was like a children's show.
It was a kind of a teen heartthrob. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Not something I would have watched.
You are correct, RDY. A quick look. He's got a few, just a couple of credits before Agatha All Along.
I'm gonna run through my short list. There are so many good foreshadowing lines. I cannot list them all. I pulled out the ones that I remembered that were definitely a little bit of my favorites. And so Billy says at one point, "A lot happened to me when I was 13," which is a reference to both his bar mitzvah as well as Billy taking over the body of William. I like that it was like referencing each of those things. This one was early on, and as soon as it happened, I don't know why I loved it so much. Mrs. Hart, when they enter the first trial, they're in the really nice house, and she screams, and she enters, she goes, "Oh my God, bury me in that kitchen." And I didn't catch it the first time, but I absolutely caught it the second time.
That's awesome.
When they summoned Rio, Aubrey Plaza, as the new Green Witch, she said, "Oh, I was just in the neighborhood," right? Because she was collecting Mrs. Hart. And so that's why Death was in the closest witch nearby would have had to have been Rio because she was collecting as Death.
I did catch that. I pieced it together afterward, and I thought that was so clever.
Yeah. I loved rewatching all of Lilia's premonitions and her kooky gaps in memory in time again, knowing where they were patterned up for. So that was super fun. I think I caught this one. Agatha, in that first trial, refused to let Billy drink the wine. She says, "You're not part of the coven." But I think she didn't want him to drink the wine because if he was poisoned and dies, then what happens to everyone stuck in his spell? She can't do that again, right? She was already stuck forever, it seemingly, like over and over with Wanda. What happens when this reality formed that they are in doesn't exist and they're there? That is why she doesn't want him to drink the wine if they don't figure it out.
Wow.
Rewatch the show. There's so many of these things. You're like, oh, why? Well, that's why. In the bedroom in her house, in Nicholas Scratch's room, he has a trophy that they pan over. The trophy is a concert choir trophy for singing. And he panhandles in the last episode for the Witch's Road with a beautiful voice, by the way. But that is why he has a choir trophy in modern age, is likely because she loved his singing. And then the last one I have is the arguments that Agatha has with the rest of the coven over the proper ballad lyrics, that they said it's supposed to be coven true. And she said, no, it's coven 2. That doesn't make any sense. It's because it was supposed to be 2 originally. And they are arguing over she created the lyrics. So of course she's going to argue that fact. But those were just a small taste of the beautiful writing of this series. It was really wonderful to rewatch. I really highly recommend if you have not.
As you were talking, I thought of another moment that I just kind of loved. And that was Alice's costuming. When she was, through most of the show, she had this necklace that was like claws around her shoulders. It's kind of like almost like they were digging into her.
I didn't catch that.
Clavicles. And, the charms hanging off of that, which were a shout out to her costume in the comic books. But then later on in the scene where they're doing the rock number of Ruich's Road, the demon comes and perches on her shoulders and digs its claws into her clavicles.
Oh.
And then when she does die, she no longer has the charms, as if to say she's no longer carrying the burden of the demonic possession.
Oh, that's fun. I
Wow.
didn't catch that. That's cool.
I appreciate that it was kind of a 2-part finale. And I wonder if they ever played with the idea of publicly saying this was only X number of episodes and then secretly releasing the actual final episode an hour after the first one dropped. I thought that would have been a really cute and fun way to do this.
Well, when the second last episode ended and you're like, oh, he made the road, I went, wait a minute, but it's called Agatha All Along. That's weird. Why would they call it Agatha All Along if he made the road? And it then turns out in the next episode, she made the road. And it was a beautiful twist from the cliffhanger ending the episode before. That was great.
Yeah, it was almost like it was a finale and an epilogue as opposed to a 2-part finale, or the last one was actually the finale. Just this is all my way of saying I agree with you. The writing of this was really good. Very well done.
Yeah. Okay, last question. And Alex, I know you said you're not a Marvel fan, so please excuse this Marvel question. I want to ask, what is the next Jewish depiction that we want to see done well in the MCU? And I know RDY's answer, so RDY, you can go first.
What, you mean Chunk from the Goonies?
From the Marvel universe.
Obviously Ben Grimm.
Yeah.
When we see the Fantastic Four. And he doesn't even have to do anything that is specifically Jewish culture related. He is just kind of the embodiment. He talks Jewish, back on Yancey Street. I just want some of that.
Yeah. He doesn't really get super Jewish in the comics until much later in the years, and they sort of retconned it a bit. So I don't mind it, but I don't want them to like totally. This is a problem that I have in terms of Judaism or Jewish characters being depicted, is what we talked about this on a recent episode, is what makes the characters Jewish, right? Do they have to look Jewish, sound Jewish? Is there have to be a menorah in the background? Like, I think it's such a wide range. My wife and I talk about this. Like, if you were a character in a movie, how would somebody know you were Jewish walking around? Because they wouldn't have any idea. I wear my Jewish star necklace underneath my shirt, and I don't go around wearing a kippot, and I don't say very many Jewish things, but my values are how I depict myself, and I internally manifest those pieces outward, and I, teach my children in those ways. But, we go to Tat Shabbat fairly regularly. With younger kids, it's hard to get to the regular Shabbats, but other than that, we do Shabbat regularly, and they don't often show people eating in movies unless it's like a feast scene. So I'll say that I want to see more Shabbat in future movies somewhere.
I don't, because they always do it wrong.
No, do it. I just wanted the question. What do you want to see done well in the MCU? I want to see Shabbat done well in the MCU.
So my answer is
Moon Knight 2. Give me Moon Knight 2. He's at a very uncomfortable dinner with his rabbi father, having Shabbat dinner. That's what I want.
I would be fine with Kitty Pryde lighting a Chanukah like she does in the comic books.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
I'm not as versed into the comics as you two are, but I really got to kind of synthesize together what you said. And for me, I'm not sure I necessarily care who the character is or what it is. I just want it done well with the same level of care and intentionality that clearly went into Agatha All Along.
Yeah, I would agree. I would love to see Kitty Pryde. I want her preparing for her bat mitzvah. If I could, that would be really nice. Of like some mention of like, next year we just hit the date or two, whatever, like some concern that she has, because that's always sort of in the back of her mind in the earlier comics. And then I mentioned this when we talked about WandaVision, I'm pretty sure, but I am still going to hold firm, because I don't think Wanda's dead, that I really want them to sort of retcon the show's writing, and that Wanda is actually Jewish in the show, and that she is, just like Billy, has sort of stopped practicing for her witchcraft. But we saw her and her brother adopted, younger. It's very possible that like maybe they didn't know, and maybe we find out like Magneto, like the adoption process, whatever it is. I hope that they retcon Wanda's Judaism so that we can be firm that in the MCU, Magneto and his kids are all Jewish, not just the reincarnated William Kaplan.
Yes and no.
Okay.
Because as much as I love that, and also for my sister Susan and for Alex, Wanda Maximoff and her twin brother Pietro are the children of Magneto. Magneto's a Holocaust survivor, so these are Jewish characters in the Marvel Universe. I kind of have The Thing mentality on this one, because in that episode of the Fantastic Four that I love so much that's hanging on your wall, Barack, The Thing has a line about how he doesn't want people to think all Jews are big orange rock monsters. And by that same token, I don't know that I want, the Scarlet Witch to be a representative of Jews.
Sure, that's fine. And maybe she doesn't. Maybe just when Magneto enters, he makes some comment that she's his child.
Yeah, the relation would be fine, and then
well,
like, all of us nerds connect the dots, but I don't know.
And I think we've danced around this before too. But like Magneto being a Holocaust survivor and being Jewish is core to him, and he's the big bad in X-Men.
Well, we'll see what happens when he comes in.
Yep.
All right. So to wrap up, I was thrilled to see this kind of effort put into a Jewish character and their background. Was it perfect? No, but hardly any movie is. I do think we're getting closer, though. I hope that Judaism can get as much airtime as Agatha and her coven. I mean, a witch's coven is a lot like Judaism, don't you think? We like to sing our recitations together. Our laws dictate that we practice in groups instead of alone. We both have unwanted stereotypes about us. We both light candles regularly. Our practices and calendars follow the cycles of the moon. Well, regardless of how similar we may seem, Judaism just doesn't have any hexes, only the occasional kvetch.
I don't know. My grandmother on my mom's side of blessed memory, she was convinced she could hex people.
Rabbi Alex, it was wonderful to have you on. Is there anything that you would like to shout out or plug in perpetuity?
Just a shout out to Temple Beth Tikva of Roswell, Georgia. And if anyone's looking for a really wonderful, welcoming congregation, our doors are open to all.
Love it.
Great.
Can I also say that I hope that when the Marvel Universe wants more advice on how to do Jewish on their properties, that they call you.
Oh,
and then you call us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I will volunteer us all. We will gladly be 3 background actors in that synagogue.
They're like, will you guys stop asking all these nerdy questions?
Yeah, again, very nice. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, that'll do it for this episode of Torah Smash. Our fiscal sponsor is Jewish Creativity International. Our theme music was created by Sean Fogel. You can check out Sean's bands and studio work at www.thesleepywest.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to rate and review us wherever you listen. It helps others find us and is an excellent way to support the podcast. We want to hear from you and continue today's nerdy discussion. Go to torahsmash.com to find where to connect with us online, purchase swag from our store, support us with a donation, find previous episodes, and more. And I imagine that a child and a parent leaving Egypt trying to write something like the Witch's Ballad probably went something like this. Walk, walk, walk and walk, walk and walk some more until our feet are sore for 40 years or more.
Barack, you do the shtick. I'm going to feed my cat. To the Flash.
Can we delete this part, please?
I got it from you. I learned from watching you, Dad. Yeah, we turned it around a little bit faster than the Marvel Universe.
And fewer NDAs.
Fewer special.